Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, John Davidson, and this is already episode 24 of Career Coaching After Hours. So thank you very much for joining me. I can hardly believe this is episode 24. So that means I've been doing these for 2 solid years. And I appreciate the folks who've watched and listened and given me some comments and some likes over the years, few subscribers, which is wonderful. But here we are, November 2025. Wowzer. I believe the first one was December 2023, so somehow this makes episode 24. And I appreciate everyone putting up with some of the technical glitches with some of the early episodes and soldiering through with me. But I hope you like this episode because I did a lot of deep thinking. And this is such a special time of year. And I've really been excited to do this presentation because I wanted to get away from being tactical, from putting on my career coach hat on. Because as much as I love giving folks advice, my clients, around maybe what organizations they should go after, or LinkedIn or resumes, those are really important tactical topics I deal with. A few examples. Sometimes folks let me get a little bit more philosophical, as in, what could you do next? What should you do next? Or what could you do with the next 30 or 60 or 90 days to prepare for maybe a career shift or a pivot? Maybe take some deep breaths and do some reflecting. And December is a fascinating time of year for me because, I'm very interested in people and humans and how they spend time in their lives and what motivates them. And December is so often this incredibly interesting month in terms of preparation and being thankful and taking time off, building some resolutions. Sometimes I call it a reflecting pond, as in maybe we've wrapped up the November month and Thanksgiving, giving thanks, but that segues into December, which is sometimes this really interesting philosophical crucible, as I sometimes call it, where people do some deep emotional heavy lifting and catch up with friends and family, or maybe make amends and do some planning for not just the new year, but maybe an inventory of sorts, as in, how did 2025 go? What do I want to get out of this next year? And can I do better with this next year? And plan out some of my activities and goals and thoughts. Where, some folks focus so much on R&R and rest and relaxation and vacation and spending that with friends and family. And there's a school of thought that that's really what December is for, as it gets a bit colder here in the Northern Hemisphere, to kind of curl up and cuddle up and huddle up with folks who are so critically important to us. And there's a school of thought that maybe it's time to give back and be thankful, get active, get out there and help out as a volunteer, do something different, or maybe try some seasonal work. Maybe shake things up a little bit in this wonderfully beautiful month, so diverse in how many different directions one could go, or how we think about it. So I'm going to dive into some topics around preparedness and connectedness. But as usual, this series doesn't assume you're my client or you're not my client. It's really kind of for everybody. And I find it valuable as a bit of a reflecting pond or a mirror for me to bounce ideas off of, not just myself, but the viewership. So certainly I can't talk about confidential issues with clients, but I do hope you find these useful, as I find them useful to present, and I nudge my clients to watch these. Please look through these. And yes, I'll layer in some music, and hopefully it sounds really good. But if it tends to cancel out, overshadow my voice, that might not be a bad thing. Hopefully it doesn't, because who doesn't love my nasally voice? But yeah, as I mentioned, I'm likely not your career coach, but there are folks out there who are career coaches, career counselors, who I believe really do want to help folks make progress and make some positive change in their life and in their career. And as usual, this is all to the best of my knowledge, so I'll try to pull all of the best of my knowledge forward and make this really interesting. But do check your sources. Feel free to look at my qualifications and credentials. Lots of folks have YouTube channels, lots of information out there, but hopefully you find this introspective and or valuable, maybe even entertaining. So onwards and upwards. Why this topic? Why would I take a whole presentation to talk about December? So as you may know, I do my presentations, I build them at the end of the month. So I know folks, of course, are going to see this here tomorrow into December and the new year. But I went through a few different iterations of this presentation. And so some really interesting things have happened to me in the last couple of months. But part of the reason I do these presentations is to bounce ideas off of even myself, as in clients will come up with a really interesting idea. And just this month I was invited to a book club, and then I've helped a couple of clients with some recommendation letters, for example. So happy to do these things. And here we are, it's the giving season. It's this reflection pond of December. But December can be quite heavy, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So if we look at films like It's a Wonderful Life, which is one of my favorites, or A Christmas Carol, is it necessarily wrong to consider December as a time to reflect back and maybe map out what we want and who we want to be in the new year? So I also thought a break from more of the tactical topics that I get into was in order, where a lot of times I focus on topics like the job market or LinkedIn or best companies to work for. I thought I'd put my counselor hat on a little bit more in this episode. So I appreciate you indulging me a bit. And as I mentioned, here in the Northern Hemisphere, it gets cold. We have December. And although corporations can avoid the calendar, us humans cannot. So for example, Microsoft, their fiscal year doesn't end in December, but as humans, so often we look at December, it's that final page of the calendar, tactically, and if you're like me even a little bit, maybe you're divining, well, what the heck happened in 2025? What can I do better? And I certainly do that myself. I have my own blueprint, and I write my goals out, and I journal, all those kind of things that I nudge clients to do. And Microsoft Designer helped me build this nice graphic of, kind of a wizard looking at different elements of philosophy and culture and calendars, trying to figure out what in the world is going on in this holiday season. And so it's this beautiful reflecting pond, or mirror, as I like to say. And a word I use a lot, especially around the holiday season, is perspicacity. And that, I believe, translates best into this idea of insight as we look into ourselves and into our past a bit and who we are, as well as foresight, looking forward. What could or should I do next? I just believe that's such a beautiful word that I use quite a bit as I help folks often deal with issues in the past, present, and future, and how we present ourselves, those kind of things. But I have a thesis that there are things we can do in December where we can focus on not just preparedness for the new year, but also that critical level of connectedness. And especially in this age of AI, where I could make a good argument that more than ever, we need our friends and family, and we need human touch points. Even though, yes, we all have Google Maps, and we have Microsoft Designer, we have Sora, and we have all these wonderful AI tools at our disposal, but that we also have humans we can touch base with. But another thing that's been troubling me a little bit is December 2025, this year, this December. It's been a really interesting year. Oh my gosh, we're drawing to a close. And I have a thought that this is maybe one of the most important Decembers that I've ever lived through. And maybe we as a culture, we're not merely at a crossroads, but that maybe some of us are concerned about, well, what is going on with the world, with all there's so much trepidation in the news, the job market, AI, job cuts, global affairs, the cost of goods. And it's hard to pick up any media outlet or look at anything without seeing that AI be in the news. It's changing technology and changing perspectives, changing industries, and changing markets. But I talk to folks about December also tactically as this idea of talon sharpening. What are we doing to sharpen our talons? Whether we're approaching a career search, or whether we're going after a promotion, or whether we're just staying sharp for what comes next. And I think a lot of us are extra unsure of what is coming next after this roller coaster of 2025. So, know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this one of the most introspective Decembers ever? After everything we've seen in this roller coaster of 2025? I'd put it on the top end of the list. But another topic that has come up for me quite a bit here in the last couple of months too is really what fills our cup. And I mentioned I kind of shifted this presentation a bit after getting invited to a simple book club, as in something that would allow for preparedness, something that would force me to read more books maybe, but also connect with other humans. And it's such a beautiful, simple concept, but I wanted to share that. And of course, I've had some clients here where they've reminded me of this idea of what fills our cup, not just ikigai and philosophically what might be a highest and best purpose for us, but what really fulfills you and us. So I'm getting awfully philosophical, so let me get a little bit more tactical. And I'm going to touch on some themes that I regularly work through with clients, sometimes I call these different dimensions of career coaching and counseling. And a big one I talk about pretty regularly is volunteering, because I'm an evil troll to all of my clients. And it's pretty darn common where I'll say, gosh, when's the last time you did some volunteer work? Because most humans I've ever worked with care about things like children or the environment or animal rights, these really big picture topics. But you can make a really good argument, I'm sure I could do a whole presentation on December as a time and place to explore new activities and maybe getting a jump on it before the new year. Idealist.org is one of my favorite sites, for example, and I elbow clients to look for maybe not just the type, cleanup type activities that certainly I like to do that. Like with Earth Core, I love to go out, use a Saturday or a weekend day, do some cleanup work. I feel good. I feel like I did something useful. I sacrifice some sleep on a weekend, but I can now put that on LinkedIn. I can say I did that. But I also interact with some other humans. So is that selfish? Maybe. Does it matter? I don't know. I think, so I'm going to use myself as an example there where perhaps think about what in this dimension might fill your cup a little bit. Volunteering, feeling good, doing good, but where it's something you could take credit for, whether it's being on a board, maybe you want to be a treasurer, maybe you want to get some more finance experience, or you just want to do some good. Are you willing to carve out a little bit of time to do that? Would now be a good time to do that during the holidays. So many nonprofits open their doors to individuals. So, and not just writing a check maybe, and that can be great too. Giving Tuesday is coming up here very, very quickly, and I'm quite aware of that. And I consistently nudge folks to look at nonprofit jobs as well. But volunteering, that's an interesting discussion point, but I'm going to give you an answer of maybe. I don't know. But as we get through this month of December, what can help us with preparedness and also connectedness? And here's a little bit of a more philosophical way to look at it, because so often I work with clients in terms of building a board or building some references out or maybe collecting recommendations. And a long time ago, this is probably 20 plus years ago, I read a really interesting article, I've never forgotten about it, about friendship, that suggests whether we like it or not, our friends and family even count favors. We're almost keeping score whether we want to or not. And sometimes December gets caught up in this idea of reconciliation. What have I done for the year? What could I do better? This kind of deep level of introspection. I think that's healthy. I might be biased, and in fact I am. But do you owe anybody some maybe LinkedIn recommendations or some back favors? Maybe inventorying. Who do I owe a text message to? That kind of thing. Who could I call? Who could I write a letter to? And this idea of inventorying, keeping folks close. Again, I think in this age that seems so unsure, maybe we need our friends and family even more so than ever. And I don't think I'm alone in that concept there. But another one I talk to clients about, kind of facially, superficially, tangentially, working out, staying in shape. Finding activities So the gym is the easiest one. I don't typically nudge folks to join a rock climbing group or a cycling group or anything like that necessarily, or to start martial arts. And those can be some great examples of maybe preparedness and connectedness, but often maybe take a lot of time or have a lot of high expense. But I used to be in the fitness industry, believe it or not, years and years ago. And what happens every January? Gosh, you get a flood. You get a whole bunch of humans that come in after the new year, as if there's magic. And we always thought that was really interesting because there'd typically always be sales in November and December for folks who want to kind of get started on that, who want to hit the gym a little bit early, maybe beat the crowds, beat the rush. And I wonder why folks don't do that. As in, why are we waiting? Is December a time maybe not just for planning, but for action? And can we find something that aligns in those two dimensions, preparedness and connectedness? So I have a home gym, but I would absolutely recommend folks consider a gym overall. I think there's some good data to suggest that if you find a place that you like that gives you some of that connectedness, it will help with you sticking with it and that preparedness, all things being equal. And then you can put, a gym goer on your resume, and well, there you go, side benefit. So just a thought. And again, my answer is maybe, I'm not sure. So I hope everybody's appreciating my answers of maybe, I'm not sure, but lots of question marks. But what about continuing ed? So here's another dimension. So volunteering, physical activity, continuing education. And so most humans I work with, and I would posit that if you're listening to this and watching my presentation, you don't have a license to renew. And so many professions don't require an actual license. I mean, some do, doctors, attorneys, what have you. But I don't have to go get a license, so there's nothing pushing me intrinsically. My job does not force me to do continuing ed. And so many folks are in that position. So if we're the CEO of our own destiny, do we have to push ourselves to do something to stay sharp or to develop new skills? This idea of growth mindset. And there's a school of thought that would say growth mindset is crucial. It's a really important skill. We should do it whether you love your job, whether you're thinking about a new job, you're thinking about maybe reevaluating your life. I have most of my clients read Who Moved My Cheese, for example. What is your cheese? Who moved it? Where is it? What do you want to do next? But is continuing ed something you could start now? Maybe regardless of what your local college or university is doing, if you have or don't have one, that is. But learning for the sake of learning, is this a dimension of career development and personal exploration that gives us preparedness and also connectedness? And I think it does. And so often, even online education, you might have a cohort or assignments, or maybe you work with another person that you know and you both go in on some continuing ed, maybe on edX or Coursera. Those are usually my first two destinations. So, well, here we go. We've got a couple more. I'll try to keep this under about 25 minutes. But social hobbies. Oh my gosh. Like I said earlier, I've been invited to a book club and I couldn't be more thrilled, because I don't think I've ever been invited to an actual book club, or if I have, I've probably blown it off and I don't really have a good answer. So I will sheepishly say I just haven't been in one. But does it take an offer to do so? I felt that was kind of mind-blowing. Like, I try to knock out one book per month. I generally consider myself a slow reader, but I got an offer and I said, yeah, I think I should take that. Maybe need to. And I don't even know what the book is going to be. But to get an invite from someone you trust, someone you like, what a beautiful thing. And how many of us are in a book club or a Toastmasters club, some kind of a social organization, and we have so much power to invite people. It's really interesting. That small invitation to join a group, even a LinkedIn group, but something where there's preparedness and connectedness. So I suppose I could complain, gosh, I've got to read another book this month, or I've got to read something that I didn't pick. But I'm going to get some connectedness with that. And so I'm going to step up and do it. Not saying you should. Again, the answer is I don't know. But in December, is this a time to consider preparedness and connectedness? An offer from someone to join a rowing group or a club. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I'm already at the gym. But again, it can be physically oriented too, or something that's social, but also has another angle to it, where we maybe get our cup filled in a couple of different ways. We're not just meeting to eat food or something like that, and that's wonderful. So it's a great reason to meet up with folks for a cup of coffee or some food and to break bread, which is a beautiful thing. But I've made the mistake of saying no and the mistake of saying yes to social hobbies and some of these types of events. But 2026, I think I want to get a head start on it. So just my thought. But here are a couple of diagrams. I'll try to wrap this up here. I talk about these a lot. The Japanese philosophy of ikigai, as in aligning what we're good at and what we love doing. And I believe this is something that's well worth reviewing every darn year. Whether you consider you have a personal blueprint or a business plan for yourself as a human being, you have a goals document. But right alongside that, there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is what do we need physiologically to feel safe in food, clothing, and shelter as we try to build up and move towards feeling better and being better. So there we be. So I'm going to share those as well. And so my purpose with this presentation is to get a little bit more philosophical, but not to get too far away from some of the tactical. And maybe there are some activities I'd love to hear in the comments, or what are you doing? Are there some things that you're doing in terms of professional and personal preparedness to tone up, to tune up, to get towards that self-actualization, to move towards the middle of ikigai, to fill your cup, but that may also give you a connectedness bonus, or maybe it's the other way around, I don't know. But I think these are some themes that are well worth evaluating as we eat and be merry during the holiday season. So thank you for joining me, and absolutely let me know. Send me an email, leave a comment. I would prefer you like my presentation than dislike it. But if you're reaching out, yes, feel free to email me, john@olympicresume.com, or john@johndavidsson.com. Music will be layered in, all these wonderful artists. I appreciate that. So appreciate that. Thank you to Calming Sounds. Check them out. But thank you as a viewer. Thank you to all of my clients. Thank you, supporters. Thank you, students. Thank you, viewers. Oh my gosh. And all these wonderful tools that I have to make this presentation, Canva, Microsoft Designer, etc. So be well, be safe. Thank you for joining me. And I hope to see you in the next episode, reviewing the next episode. So take care of yourself. Enjoy the holidays. Be well. Stay safe. I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.